I'd like to call the Surface Transportation Committee meeting to order for Tuesday, November 6th. I'm sorry, November 2nd at 9 a.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we take a roll call, please?
Sure. Ed Morales. Tom Schmidt.
Here.
Thank you. Kevin Brightsky. Jim Pressel. David Peeler. Rick Rifa. Sue Lynch. And Gerald Sweats.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes roll call.
Mark Odell is here for the town of Chesterton.
Thank you.
Apple here from Union Township.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, George.
Morning, sirs.
Morning, Gary.
Good morning.
Okay, we'll move right down. Next item is the public comment on agenda items. Scott?
Mr. Chair, I have not been made aware of anybody signing up for a public comment. I can ask you to entertain if there are any from the floor right now.
I'd like to entertain any comments from the floor on agenda items. No comments? We'll move to the next item. Next item is the minutes of the April 6, 2021 meeting. It's included in your packet.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes, sir.
We have
I'll support that. Gerald Sweats.
We have a motion by Mark, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Next item is Resolution 21-19, adopting the safety performance measure targets for 2022. That's on pages 3 and 5. This adoption of Indiana state performance targets for safety and actions requested for recommendation to the Technical Planning Committee for approval. Scott, any comments?
Sorry to find the mute button. At this time, I'd like to briefly walk you through what the actions that are being requested for Resolution 2119 on adopting the safety performance measure targets are. As you are probably aware, every year, INDOT sets statewide targets in the areas of safety. There are 5 performance measures in particular that they set targets for the whole state. Those are the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the number of serious injuries, the number of serious injuries per million vehicle miles traveled, and the number of non-motorized injuries and fatalities. And these apply to all public roads in the state of Indiana. It is NERC staff's recommendation that we adopt the INDOT statewide targets for our region. And so Resolution 2119 is in support of this effort. I will briefly share my screen of the agenda packet items just so that we're following along on the same page. So if you look at in the agenda packet down on pages, it's really on page 5 where you see the tables where these actions would affect today. the number of fatalities in 2022, the state has set a target of 876. That is a little bit higher than the 817.3 in 2021. And what that would look like in the NERC region would be about 102 based on our proportion of the number of fatalities, based on the proportion of the traffic that we have in our region. The target that's being set for the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled is 1.076. That is also slightly up from 1.006 in 2021. And what that would look like in our region is 0.830. So we do slightly better just based on the statistics that we've been measuring. The number of serious injury target is 2,998.2. And that is actually slightly down from 3,311.4 in 2021. And what that would look like in our region is 347. The target for the rate of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled is being set for 3.675 in 2022. And again, that is slightly down from 4.088 back in 2021. And the number of non-motorized serious injuries and fatalities target is being set for 344.5, which is also a slight improvement from 393.6 back in 2021. And so these tables show the changes that will be made to the NWI 2050 plan, as well as our 2022 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program as a result of adopting these targets. I can entertain any questions at this time. Otherwise, I can ask Mr. Chair if you would like to entertain any motions for recommendation to the Technical Planning Committee for adopting these statewide targets.
Hey, Scott, I just got a quick question. Is it a
Yeah.
typo down on the lower box for page number 28 for the amended target desired? It's got 876.9 and up above we were 876.0.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Odell, for pointing that out. Yes, that is indeed a typo. It does mean to say 876.0 in that bottom table as well. And I have
Okay.
made our administrative staff aware of that, and that will be printed correctly in the Technical Planning Committee packet for next week on November 9th. Thereafter.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Is there any other comments on the resolution 21-19?
Make a motion to adopt.
Second, this is David Wright.
We have a motion to adopt. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries, I believe that's 6-0. Is that correct? 6 of us?
I believe that is correct.
Motion adopt at 6-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the 2020 census data presentation. Our staff will give a presentation of the 2020 census preliminary data. The presentation was given at the September 16, 2021 Executive Board meeting, and a copy of this can be found on the website. Scott?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So myself and my colleague, Peter Kimball, will be giving this presentation. And so I will actually turn it over to my colleague, Peter Kimball, to begin the presentation.
Great. Everybody can see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep, we got
Great.
it.
Sweet. So this is kind of a preliminary overview of the 2020 census data that has been released. Some of you might have seen this a month ago in some of our committees, but there is one updated slide here. So we'll look at kind of general population numbers and some visualizations to see how the population has changed since the 2010 census. So as far as initial numbers go here, we broke down Lake, Porter, and LaPorte County. Lake had a 0.5% change. Porter County grew the most out of our three counties at 5.4%, and LaPorte County had a 0.9% increase here. The region as a whole had a 1.6% change. Scott, if you want to talk about kind of the analysis you did to our neighboring regions.
Right. So I looked at the NERC region's population growth between 2010 and 2020 in the context of other regions nearby. And as you can see, compared to, for example, the Chicago area, we were just about the same. They grew by 1.7%. We grew by 1.6%. And I should note the Chicago area on the slide corresponds to the counties in Illinois near the Chicago area. Those are the Chicago Metropolitan Agencies for Planning's counties. Our regions both grew faster than Southwest Michigan, the area anchored by the St. Joseph Benton Harbor area. That region actually lost population by 1.4% in the last decade. However, both our region and the Chicago regions did not grow nearly as fast as the South Bend area to the east of us, which grew by 3%, and not nearly as much as the Indianapolis area, which grew by 13.3% in population over the last decade. But we did grow overall, as Peter just mentioned.
So here are a couple of visualizations on our change in population. This one's just a little fuzzy looking at the playback, but here is the 2000 to 2010 to 2020 population change from the census. You can kind of see where we gain more dots among the census tracts within the region. A better visualization here is by census tract as well. You can kind of see as certain census tracts build up and grow darker, that they'll break, and you can see where we've added census tracts because of increase in population in certain areas. This again is going from 2000 to 2010 to 2020. As far as municipal population change, we can see where we lost population in some municipalities and grew in population. North Lake County, we seem to lose some of our population from those municipalities. Southern Lake County, we see growth, as well as Valpo and some of the other smaller municipalities. And I'll let Scott go into the actual numbers here.
Sorry, looking at these double stacked bar charts for all of the 41 municipalities in the NERC region, or that are members of the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, you can see that the tallest bars correspond to those areas with the greatest population, and the blue bars are the 2010 populations, and the orange are the 2020 populations. And overall in our region, you can clearly still see that Gary and Hammond stand out as being the two largest municipalities. However, both of those municipalities definitely lost significant amounts of population between 2010 and 2020, with Gary losing more so than Hammond. And you can also see that there have been some areas that have grown quite a bit. For example, Crown Point really stands out as the orange bar is definitely a lot taller than the blue bar, as well as in St. John, for example, and Winfield and some of the other communities in our region. But overall, the patterns of the municipalities pretty much stayed similar to what it was in 2010. And what that looked like in terms of density, that means the population divided by the municipality's land area. And again, the blue bars correspond to the 2010 census data and the orange corresponds to 2020. You can see that the most densely populated municipalities are usually in the kind of urban core in Lake County. So for example, Hammond, it was the most densely populated municipality back in 2010. It has been slightly surpassed by Highland, but Munster and New Chicago and Whiting are all, as well as Dyer, all have more than 2,500 people per square mile within their municipalities. So these kind of correspond to the heavily residential areas in Lake County.
So a few pieces of information we were able to get from this first release of census data were the 2020 housing units per census tract. We can see kind of, Southern Lake County census tracts have a large number of housing units. And then as we look into some of these darker blue areas, we're getting kind of to the point, I believe, with the population as well, where those census tracts will break again. So some of the areas do have a smaller number of units, but they're also smaller census tracts, which is correlating to that population. And we'll see some more comparisons with this in the future with some of our reports. And this, of course, will be going into our long-range transportation plan as well. Will be updated. So this is just kind of an initial look. Again, we have our 2020 areas with minority populations. This looks fairly similar to our 2010 minority area map. This is the first piece of demographic information that we've gotten from this census that will go into updating our environmental justice areas. So as that's released, we'll also get a better sense of how our EJ areas have changed since the 2010 census data as well. And then here's a map right here that just kind of shows with these blue lines where we added census tracts because of increases in population throughout a region. Moving on to the response rate here. The national response was 67%, and Indiana had a self-response of 70.3%. We did a little bit better as a state compared to the 2010 response rate. It was 69.6%. And as of this morning, I double checked and we finally have our county breakdown as far as self-response. So Lake County was at 69.2% compared to that 70.3% Indiana self-response rate. Porter County did pretty well at 78.3% compared to the 70.3% as a state, and LaPorte County had a 68.5 as reported to 70.3%. So again, more information will be coming out as the census has that information available. You can feel free to contact myself or Scott. I've had a lot of requests from people just looking for even Excel sheets with the data in it. I think in the past, some people received hard copies of the data, and I'm not sure if the Census Bureau has been doing that this year unless you've actually submitted a request for it. So you can always feel free to contact myself to get you that data from these 2020 numbers. And this is on our website. I will be updating the website today with that new slide I added with the county response. So if there are any questions, we can take those.
Questions for Pete? Thank you very much for the presentation, Peter and Scott. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda is staff updates. Scott, 6-1 travel demand model update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the travel demand model update, I wanted to update this committee that our staff is in contract talks right now with the firm to update the travel demand model. After the request for proposals review committee unanimously recommended one firm to be awarded the contract, the official announcement of the firm is expected on November 18th at the full commission meeting. Hopefully 1 week prior to that, you would see that information in the packet that goes out to the distribution list, but our attorney is still reviewing the contract process. The firm will be working with NERC staff to update the travel demand model for our NERC region, which includes portions of Northeast Illinois and the Chicago area, in order to make the model more accurately predict travel, road traffic, as well as transit, freight, and non-motorized, which will better help us assist our communities with more accurate transportation planning and studies, as well as help us on our next long-range planning update, which we anticipate due by May of 2023. So this is a major effort, and our staff looks forward to participating with the firm in that process. If there are any questions about that, I can entertain them.
No questions for Scott. We'll move on to 6-2 is the e-commerce in Northwest Indiana implementation. Scott?
Yes, thank you again. So the e-commerce in Northwest Indiana was a plan you might have recalled that we adopted last fall of 2020. It was an award-winning plan awarded with the National Association of Regional Councils, or NARC. The next step in the e-commerce in Northwest Indiana plan, which we are embarking on right now, is to go through the implementation process of the plan. And the first step in that implementation process involves conducting sub-area plans for specific parts of communities within our region that staff has determined to be in consultation with the municipal employees to be most suitable for investments in e-commerce infrastructure like distribution centers and warehouses. So specifically, our staff are currently working with the city of Gary on a sub-area planning effort that we're just starting to work on now. And we're working with AJ Bittner, the Director of Redevelopment in the city of Gary, and he has ideas about sub-areas within that city that we should focus on for this sub-area planning effort. The sub-area planning is going to be done by a consultant that we're going to do an expedited RFP for to hire a consultant to help us with the sub-area planning for that community. But the goal is to also expand the sub-area planning to other communities as well, once we see an initial success there. And so we're going to finalize that RFP process within the coming weeks for sure. Are there any questions about that?
We'll move on to 6-3 is the City of East Chicago, Dickey Road and Riley Road National Highway System removal. Scott?
So the Indiana Department of Transportation has requested that NERC work with the City of East Chicago on removing Dickey Road and Riley Roads from the National Highway System. They were designated as on the National Highway System in 2012 as a result of the passage of the MAP 21 Transportation Bill, which was the federal transportation bill back in 2012. They were just automatically added onto the National Highway System during the period when the Klein Avenue Bridge was closed. As you might recall, it was closed for a whole decade. It is now recently reopened. So INDOT has requested that NERC work with the City of East Chicago on removing those road segments from the National Highway System and instead restoring the Klein Avenue Bridge span portion onto the system. The requirements say that INDOT has ultimate authority to make that decision, but they also require INDOT to consult with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, that's NERC, that's us, as well as the municipalities that are affected by that decision. So we have been beginning to be in touch with the City of East Chicago about getting their concurrence for these changes. We have already worked with the United Bridge Partners, and they are definitely on board with restoring the Klein Avenue Bridge span back onto the National Highway System. Again, technically, INDOT has the ultimate authority to make this change, but so far we're still waiting for a formal response from the City of East Chicago. We've worked with their city engineer, and he is working on getting the mayor plugged into that process. Our determination is that the removal of these road segments would not in any way affect any federal transportation funds that NERC controls. It may have a very minor effect on federal transportation funds that INDOT controls, not through the NERC process. But it is our understanding that if INDOT could make those decisions anyway, that the city really doesn't stand to lose any eligibility by working with the Indiana Department of Transportation on those changes. But I just wanted to let you know that what most likely will happen going forward is we're going to make a whole bundle of changes to the National Highway System next year because of the census urbanized area process that will play out next year. There'll be a rulemaking about different segment eligibilities in urbanized areas. And so once we do that, we'll have a whole bundle of changes in a resolution that would go before the NERC committees probably in the second half of 2022. So we anticipate that we're not going to officially act on the City of East Chicago's segments until they're part of a larger bundle that will happen in 2022, but I can entertain any questions about that or concerns that the committee might have.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Scott, Dean Button, City of Hammond. Has INDOT decided to make repairs to the so-called Daniels Detour prior to the declassification of these streets?
That, I'm afraid I don't have the answer for you at this time. We have not been in too extensive of a coordination with NDOT yet, but we do anticipate that once we are at a more formal stage of actually processing these changes in a resolution, we would have those discussions. But I appreciate you making us aware of that issue.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long-standing Klein Avenue detour, and the road was really not intended for that sort of traffic volume. And I think it shows that it's in fairly poor condition, and I would hate to see NERC be responsible for making those repairs or being petitioned by the LPA to assist in the making of those repairs in light of the state's decision to divert all of that Klein Avenue traffic to local streets. I say that as one of a municipality who accepted a relinquishment of an NDOT right-of-way, and have come to learn that it's not in the LPA's best interest to take on NDOT's responsibility, nor do I believe that it's NERC's responsibility to take on NDOT's problems. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I can entertain if there are any other questions.
We'll move on to 6-4, which is the NERC Federal Highway Administration Freight Program Assessment. Scott?
I think I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Peter Kimball, if he doesn't mind giving us the update about this.
Sure. So following the MPO assessment, we had our Federal Highway Administration Freight Program Assessment, which is a little more casual, and it was last done in 2018, I believe, January, February of 2018. But this was a time where we were able to kind of update Federal Highway on what our planning efforts have been in regards to freight, as well as some of our partnerships. And we were also able to kind of talk to them about any needs or wishes that we had that maybe they could help us in the future with. I think they were happy to see both our e-commerce report as well as the summary of our 2019 our rail task force, kind of the data that we collected from that and presented to them. And I think that they were pleased to see kind of what we've done with freight. So I have sent them all of our freight related planning documents, and they've been able to take a look at those new documents.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions on the Federal Highway Administrative Freight Program Assessment? No questions. We'll move on to 6-5, NERC's Ports of Indiana Burns Harbor relationship. Would that be you, Peter, again, or Scott?
I believe, Peter, if you wouldn't mind giving an update about that.
Sure. So we were able to meet with the Port of Burns Harbor back in, I think it was September, maybe. But they have had a lot of turnover in staff. So it was just kind of nice to be able to meet the new port director as well as the statewide port director. And we were able to go over there and sit down and talk to them for a couple hours. And I think they are looking forward to, in the future, having participation at NERC, as well as it sounds like we will have a good kind of exchange of data. Those, again, will probably be more broad numbers, but I think that will help us with planning efforts as far as freight movement in and out of the port and our major roadways.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions for Peter on the Ports of Indiana Burns Harbor relationship? No questions. We'll move to the last one on 6-6 is a safety program update.
Sure. So I'll also go ahead and take that one here. As far as our safety program update, I wanted to let everyone know that NERC is participating in the Northwest Regional TIM group. So that's kind of a group of local police and fire and towers and everybody who deals with kind of incident management on our major roadways. So we're providing them support however they see fit. I think it's also kind of a good exchange of information too, as we look forward to some of our future HSHIP projects. Additionally, I wanted to mention that there is a project I will be working on kind of in the pipelines that I think will be good, both for anecdotal feedback that may be useful in some of our RSAs, as well as a way to kind of engage the public, especially during times of COVID where we're not out in the field as much. I'm looking to do kind of a safety feedback map similar to the community tree inventory we have, where the public is able to go ahead and mark on the map and mention concerns safety-wise. And the intention is not for this to become a complaint board, but more so supplementary information that may kind of back projects that people are looking for HSHIP money, as well as I mentioned, provide additional information if they happen to be in some of the areas where locals are doing RSAs for HSIP funding. And that will be through a Esri platform called Survey 123.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions for Peter on the safety program update? No questions. Next item, our next scheduled meeting is scheduled for February 1st, 2022 at 9 a.m. in the Lake Michigan room at the NERC office. Is there any other comments that anyone has, or anyone want to bring anything up before we adjourn?
How's retirement?
Retirement's great.
Is it? Both of you. That's right. Two of you.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks, Mike.
Chairman, this is Thomas Dow, the Transportation Director at NERC. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we continue to operate month to month on whether or not the meetings will be in the offices or virtual. And unfortunately, we never know until the first of the month as to what that will proceed. So I just wanted to remind everybody we could still be virtual at the next meeting. We don't know yet.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments from anyone? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, that motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.